Hey,
Hey, you can hear me?
yeah, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Right on.
Sweet. Cool. I was just playing around with the visual effects. I thought maybe I was going to do the interview as like a dog, but I figured, no, I'll
Yeah,
just
I
be a human.
tried I tried brightening myself, but then I don't know, I kind of liked it better dark. I don't know, is this too dark for you or?
No, that's cool, man. Yeah. I usually just do like audio interviews anyway. So
Okay.
all the video is just a bonus.
Yeah, I don't know, like I feel like I don't know, during the pandemic I did a lot of Zoom calls and I don't know, I feel like there's something like nice about seeing the other person too, but
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah.
You'll be my second video interview. And I agree. Like the last one I did was with a band from Victoria, BC.
Okay.
So actually really cool band called Ex Cowboy.
Okay,
And
nice.
yeah, so the video is kind of a nice little touch. So
Yeah, I mean, might as well get all the media going, at once.
definitely. So what's been going on? I feel like it's been like 10 years, but I feel like it hasn't been 10 years.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of like the same kind of thing, I'm still like freelancing and audio, but I guess when you knew me, I was working for the studio.
Yeah.
Um, but I went freelance like in 2014
Cool.
and just been kind of like, yeah, doing that. Um,
Cool.
and
Yeah,
yeah, I guess there's been like,
go
what?
ahead.
All right, you're gonna hit record?
It's going now. Yep. Yep. We're tracking.
Okay,
We're live. Or,
cool. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's like hard to say what's been going on in the last 10 years. I feel like it's just been kind of like a lot of, a lot of similar things. Maybe there's been like a slow progression towards one thing or another, but it's kind of hard to tell when you're in it.
Yeah.
I've been mostly living in Montreal. I moved to Ottawa for 4 years,
Cool.
which is where I'm from. So I had like a 4-year stint in Ottawa, but now I'm back in Montreal.
Okay. Cool. Yeah,
And yeah, like,
I was thinking it might be fun to go back and like just start at the beginning because I saw like you started recording pretty early, right? Like when you were in your early teens, or is that right?
well, like when I started, I started getting into music. Like I was maybe like 11 or 12, and then like learned to play guitar. And then, yeah, like pretty early, I started recording myself. Like it's just like a fun way to demo like songs and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was into recording like pretty much as long as I've been playing music, I've been into recording it. But it was mostly just like demoing stuff at home. I had like a 4-track cassette recorder, which was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I don't think I had like any ambition of like being a professional, I didn't really know, I don't think also that you could just record, or I was just having fun kind of like creating music.
Yeah.
By myself mostly, though I did play in a band as well. But yeah, so did that, and then I guess I started recording other people when I moved to Montreal. There was like this studio space. I'm trying to remember how this happened exactly. I think, yeah, the second apartment I lived in Montreal was kind of like Little Italy area.
Okay.
And if I remember this correctly, like I met my neighbor, who was this guy named Borden. And this is all sounding very like happenstance, but I think this is actually how it happened. Like I met this guy, he was my neighbor. And then he had this sort of loft space, which was a practice space as well.
Okay.
And he was like, yeah, you should come by. And like, we talked about how I was interested in recording and music. And somehow we got into this arrangement where like, I would help him with his recording sessions. But in exchange, I could use his studio, like when he wasn't around, to like record my own stuff. So that's kind of how that's how that relationship started. This place was called the Torn Curtain.
The Torn Curtain? This was his studio space?
It was like a loft. It was like a big loft space that he had converted into rehearsal rooms.
Okay.
Like jam spaces for bands. And then one of the rooms was like extra soundproofed.
Cool.
And that was his studio space, which was basically like a mix room. But there was also this big common area, which he had, I don't know if there was like a snake or I don't know if there was like built-in snake, or if I think we just ran cables from like his room to the live room, which was just like a common area.
Okay.
And so we'd record drums and stuff out there.
Cool.
Yeah, and it was like a very like cool place. There were like, you know, like after hour parties.
Nice.
A lot of like cool Montreal artists were hanging out there at that time.
Okay.
Most famously like Grimes.
Oh,
she
nice.
was there a lot.
Interesting.
Yeah, I saw her like play to like a very small room of people like when she was just getting started.
Cool. Did you get a sense that something was going to come from that, or was it just, I
mean, it's hard to say. Like, I remember being impressed, but you know, you never think that someone is going to become like an international megastar.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I just remember being like, this is really cool. Like, I'd love to hear more from this person.
Cool.
And then, you know, she just like blew up after that.
Yeah.
But,
that's very cool. Did you grow up in a music household? Like, was it part of your family's vibe?
Yeah, especially my dad. My dad's always been like a really big music fan. Never really working in music, though he did play in bands. But yeah, he always had like a lot of music. You know, he had like a pretty extensive CD collection. So we shared a lot of music. Like growing up, he would share a lot of music with us. You know, we'd listen to a lot of music in the car, and then he always had a lot of music playing, but also like every year he'd make like a mix CD for Christmas.
Okay. Cool.
So that was like a big tradition where like every year there'd be like his favorite songs of the year would be like compiled into this one CD of like 20 or so tracks. And then that would be like on heavy rotation.
Would he gift that to you?
He would gift it to everyone.
Okay.
Like, yeah, we'd get it as well. Now it's sort of like, now it's become like a playlist.
Yep. Oh, but it's still going though.
The tradition lives on. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So yeah, he's always been like a music fan, less a music maker, but more of a music fan. So yeah, I always grew up listening to a lot of music. And then he introduced me to not only like a lot of like 90s indie rock stuff, which was kind of his thing, but a lot of older music too. Like when I started getting into like classic rock, you know, like I heard Hendrix and I was like, whoa, this is so great. I want to learn to play guitar. And then like, you know, he would like introduce me to like other bands like Led Zeppelin and stuff that like I might not have necessarily found on my own. It might have taken longer.
Yeah.
So
that's really cool.
No, I feel like I was lucky to, be introduced to like a lot of music that it takes longer for people to come across on their own. Cause it's like, just like a little more obscure, you know?
Yeah.
Like, he was into a lot of like 80s alternative bands like The Cure and like The Smiths and stuff like that, which like I kind of grew up listening to a lot, which, you know, like most people, I feel like it takes like, there's like a few extra steps to get to those bands, like those sort of like more cult status bands.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like if you don't have that around you, you tend to be introduced maybe through something that's, you know, on the radio or more mainstream, and then you bypass or you just accidentally miss out on all kinds of, you know, the people that influenced the popular,
exactly,
however you want to think about it. So you were in Montreal, living there, working at the, that was a Torn Curtain, or like hanging out at the Torn Curtain before going to school, before you decided to go to college?
Yeah, there was a year off. There's also like a whole other chapter in there, which is like really kind of crazy. I don't talk about a lot because it's kind of a weird chapter, but in a nutshell, like my dad's brother, my uncle, he was in the music industry, working as he had his own like merchandise company, like making T-shirts for rock bands.
Oh, cool.
So like after the time right after I finished high school, I started working for him, traveling, like basically selling T-shirts at shows. But he had some like really big bands. So the first like job, which was more of an internship actually, was on tour with the Rolling Stones.
Cool.
In Europe. So like when I was
first gig.
Yeah, because they were such a big tour that they actually had like a whole internship program, which was basically all, it was all like products of nepotism. Like anyone who was like connected, related to like the people that were working for the tour, had an opportunity to like basically intern for the summer. Okay.
But you're interning you're not interning for the Stones, you're interning for this touring company?
Well, I'm basically well, I was working for my uncle's company.
Yeah.
But they threw all of these kids together. So like
Okay.
I was like my uncle's, contact or whatever, or he was my contact in, but like there were other kids who were related to like the production company, who were related to like management and stuff like that. So it was like a whole bunch of people, and we were all grouped together and sort of like assigned different roles.
Okay.
And because my connection was to the merch, I was mostly doing merch. So I did do a bit of sound stuff. And so I did that so after that was like a 3-month tour. And after that, there was opportunities for me to jump on to other tours.
Okay.
So right after that, I did the Police, which was like, I was more like hired. I was actually being paid.
Okay.
I don't remember if the internship was paid or not. I don't think it was, but then I was actually hired to be like an assistant. So then I did that. So during that period after high school, I was mostly working, and then in my off time, I would come back to Montreal.
Okay.
So I wasn't going to college yet. I was mostly doing this touring stuff and doing like band stuff when I was in Montreal, like either writing music or like hang out and doing whatever recording I could at the Torn Curtain.
Okay. When you're on the road doing the internship thing or working with the merch company, like, did you take in any of the sound, like the philosophies of live sound? Like, did anyone kind of teach anything there?
Well, I tried, but I often think about this because it's a bit weird. Like, I actually didn't really get much from the live sound people that I met.
Okay.
And I'm not sure why. I think it might be because, like, it was just too big. Like, I didn't know enough yet to really understand what was going on. And it was on such a massive scale that it was just like, I would try to pick their brains and like, I didn't really get it. Like, I remember like a few memories of like the monitor guy trying to show me the routing and stuff like that. And I was just like, this is just too like, it's too much. And it was too huge. And also because I was an intern, like a lot of what I was privy to was just like, this is how you like fly like huge stacks of speakers, Okay. So it was a lot about like the logistics of like how to do a loadout with like 40 trucks or whatever and stuff like that. That was a lot of what I was learning.
Okay.
And like the actual like sound mixing stuff was like less discussed as far as like but yeah, a part of me like kind of wishes I'd been more curious and like asked more questions in terms of the actual mixing. But like, then again, it's like, it's a huge crew, and like the FOH mixers were always kind of like a little bit more like rock stars. You had like the rock stars, which were definitely like, you weren't supposed to talk to. Then there was like the band gear people, which were like also like very cool. And like, they were like and then underneath those people, you had like the head lighting person and the head FOH person.
Okay.
And then like, I usually hung out with the crew below that, which was like the monitor techs or like the people that just like set up the mics and stuff.
Okay.
And so, yeah, they never really seemed interested in talking to me about the sound, or maybe I didn't ask enough questions. But yeah, like at that point I don't think I had enough like knowledge to like ask the proper questions.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like being thrown into a calculus class without any like math background or something.
Yeah, the scale was just so huge. Like, it was just like hard to wrap my head around. Like the Rolling Stones had like 2 monitor desks, like one for just the Stones and then one for like all the backing band. Okay. And then they had the FOH. It was just such a huge production. So many people. It's like it was hard for me to like infiltrate myself and like figure out like what I actually needed to learn.
Were you worried about like stepping on toes or like annoying people or anything like that? Yeah.
Yeah, I was very shy too. Like I was very young. I was like other than the other interns, I was by far the youngest person around. So, and at that point, I was pretty shy. So yeah, I didn't really know how to like navigate that, even though I was interested, I didn't really know like where, like how to do that. And I was very careful to like, like stay in my lane,
Gotcha.
So yeah, cool. But yeah, for some reason, and at this point I hadn't gone to school yet. So I didn't even have like the basics of audio knowledge,
Yeah. Gotcha. So then you come back from this gig, and then that's when you decide you want to pursue it kind of like with a professional credential, like you decide you want to go to school?
Yeah, so I think my feeling was that the tour life was very cool, and like I traveled a lot at a young age, which was very cool, but I wasn't really able to like pursue the stuff that I was ambitious about, like at that point, which was like being in a band or like writing songs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I wasn't really able to do that when I was gone, because I wasn't really able to, I don't know, like I wanted to, meet people in the music scene in Montreal, but like I'd meet people and then I'd be gone for 3 months and then come back, and things were moving really fast. Things move really fast at that age. So like being gone 2 months feels like an eternity.
Yeah.
So I wanted to settle down in Montreal, and it was like I was trying to decide whether I wanted to go to university or what I wanted to even study. And I just thought like something in audio would help me, record my own music, and would kind of like keep me in the world that I wanted to be in, which was music.
Okay.
But I'd also have some sort of degree and maybe be able to like get a job. So that was kind of my thinking.
Was it a debate between like studying music in terms of like composition versus like studying the audio engineering side of things?
I mean, I don't think it was a very long debate, because I played music in high school. Like I went to an art school, and I played double bass, and I learned like how to read music and stuff. But I think I knew like I wasn't good enough, because like I saw like the people that I knew that were pursuing a music education were like way more diligent about studying and practicing. And my ambitions were not really to like become virtuoso as much as I just wanted to like write and record my own songs.
Okay.
So I think I considered it, but I didn't think I was good enough, which was probably true. And it wasn't really where my interests were,
Okay.
So I was like, well, but I still want to be around music. So then I was like, well, maybe somehow this came across. And I also applied to, communications.
Okay.
Which I got into, but then when I really looked at the course, I was like, oh, seems like it's like a lot of stuff that doesn't really interest me, and like a small amount of stuff that does. Like all the multimedia stuff kind of interested me, but then there was all this other stuff included in the course that I was like, so then I just went into like an audio production.
Okay, cool.
Course, yeah.
And now kind of jumping forward a little bit to the present, like really the lines have kind of blurred between production and writing, really, right? So like you might not really, like a musician or an artist might not understand a whole lot about scales or playing guitar or theory, but they can use the production tools to write the music that they hear in their mind.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely, the lines are getting blurrier and blurrier for sure. Even in what I'm doing now, like I don't know if it's just a coincidence or if it's like a product of like the world we're living in, but I'm doing more like co-production and even writing again, because like once I got into engineering, I didn't really write anymore. Like I kind of like got fully sucked into this like engineering world. Okay. And I stopped writing, and I stopped like creating my own songs and stuff like that. And now like I'm kind of getting back into it with a few projects, like trying to like write with people and like be involved in more of a like production role. Yep. Which I actually haven't done a whole lot of up until now. It's been more just like straight engineering. Okay, cool. So that's been fun to sort of like dip my toes back into the like a little bit more creative. Well, just like a different creative realm, Yeah, a different part of it. Mm-hmm. When you were coming out of school, was it quite competitive? Like when did you graduate with a handful of people? Well, so our class, like, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but like we started out with like 40 people, I want to say. Yep. And then at the end there was like 12. Okay. A lot of people dropped out, because like people went into it for all kinds of different reasons. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And a lot of people either gave up on it or like decided it wasn't for them. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, so it wasn't that, a lot of people I think realized that like what they wanted out of the class was just to be able to do their own music. Like a lot of people went in kind of like me, like just wanting to do their own music, and but then didn't really get into the whole engineering as a as a trade, like as a job, as a profession. So a lot of people lost interest. But I actually gained interest like in it. Like I didn't really know going in that I would be interested in like in the more technical aspect of it. But I kind of did get the bug like at that point when I was introduced to like all this information about like microphones or miking techniques or recording techniques, like that, like to me, I didn't necessarily know that was going to be so interesting to me. And then when it was, I just got more and more into it. So I would say like, yeah, in my graduating class, like there was only like I feel like there was only 12 people that graduated. And then like, I don't know how many of those people went on to pursue a career in engineering. Like I only know of one, but it's not like I kept in touch with, with many. So
when you got out of the program and you graduated, did you did you dive into your own studio work, like home studio work, or did you hit the pavement pretty hard and like end up working in studios around Montreal? Or
so I guess I did hit the pavement. I got kind of lucky because like one of the people in my class was this guy Nick, and he had been interning at Planet Studios when I was in school. And so there was like kind of a door open for me there, though the door wasn't open immediately. I had to kind of like, I had to send him a few follow-up emails to, you know, because like they didn't have any openings at the time. So I waited and I did a few other things. Like I kept working at Torn Curtain. I had a bit of a home studio and I think I was recording a little bit like with my friends and stuff. And then I did a few other things like with this guy I met through school. I remember we were, you know, volunteering at these weird studios. Like one was like, I just remember like, I only went there a few times, but this is like the kind of thing I was trying to do. I was trying to like, anywhere I felt like I could get in to volunteer, I would. So this was like, I remember this studio, it was like, they did a lot of reggae, I think. And it was a really weird place, but yeah, I remember doing a bit of work there. And then I did a lot of stuff for radio stations, volunteering for like community radio in Montreal. And so I worked at CJLO and they would do some live sessions. So I did some live sessions there. That would have been pre me working at the studio. So I was kind of, doing whatever I could, I guess, between the home studio and like these other little avenues. And with Torn Curtain as well. And then at some point, Nick wrote me and they needed someone to help out at Planet. So then that's when I got in there and I ended up working there for about 3.5 years.
I know, like we worked briefly together at Planet for just a couple months, and I remember you. Go ahead.
That was it, huh? I can't remember exactly the timeline.
Yeah, it was maybe 4 months. It might have been that long. I can't remember, but I remember quickly you explaining to me that there was a large hospitality business factor to the studio world.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people getting into it wouldn't realize that, and I think that might be interesting to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, well, I can only speak for like the environment at this particular studio, but this was like the studio was modeled a little bit after like this sort of like classic studio era of maybe I want to say the 90s, but maybe it was also the 80s or you know, the early 2000s, where like part of the studio experience was really like it was really like a 360 experience where yes, there was like the equipment, the technology, you know, the expertise of the staff, but it was also like, you know, like setting out like nice food for people, having like great coffee, like being greeted at the door, like everything you could think of to make the experience notable and like, I guess like pleasant for the client. So that was really a big part of the aesthetic of the studio. So that was sort of like drilled into our heads like very early on, especially because as you're working through the ranks, like there's a bit of a hierarchy system, or there was at the time, where it's like you start sort of like as an intern, maybe like you do, like it was kind of like the classic model, like you start like a runner, and you're just getting food for people, and then like slowly you graduate to assistant, and then you're like working more in the studios, and then maybe you're engineering, you know, once you get some experience in the studios. But yeah, like from the moment you start, you're sort of like taught that it's like, yeah, your job is just to make the experience the best possible for the client, and like that includes like going to get food, like keeping everything clean, cleaning the studio after the sessions.
Well, it relieves such a large mental load for the artist, right? Because the last thing you want a creative person to be thinking about when they're in the creative zone is like, where's my sandwich, or like, how do I get a glass of water, or you know what I mean? Like, you don't want any of that stuff on their minds.
Yeah, and like, you're selling a service. At the end of the day, like engineering or even like just studio, just having a studio is like, it's like you're providing a service, and it's like, in the service industry, you just you want to provide, I guess, the best service you can for your clients, and that can mean a variety of things. But like at this studio is really like, you greet at the door, you're offered a coffee, the studio's clean. Everything's ready to go.
Yep.
Everything's working.
Yep.
Like
all the gear you've ever read about is there.
Yeah. If there's a problem, like you don't want the client to notice, like everything needs to run smoothly. The assistant, should be like as silent as possible, like only like, you're not encouraged to like give your feedback on the music unless like you're asked directly, like stuff like that. Which is like what you read about when you read about like, you read interviews with like older engineers who came up in the studio, like in studios in LA or New York. Like that's what you read about. That was the same kind of mentality. So it really modeled itself after like the studios of yore.
Cool. And you eventually climbed up to in-house engineer at Planet, correct?
Yeah, like I asked for a time I was kind of like the senior assistant.
Okay.
Which meant that you did do engineering, but you also did assisting. And I sort of like near the end, I was in charge of like hiring and training new assistants.
Cool.
So I was like the most senior assistant. So yeah, I like brought in new people and trained them, sort of like oversaw all of that.
Okay.
And then like if there was a session, I would, unless there was another engineer hired by the client, I would be the sort of like the go-to engineer.
Gotcha. So they just booked the studio space, like you were included in that booking unless they had an outside.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I was an in-house engineer, but I guess I did also do assistant work if that was required. So it was kind of like, maybe near the end I did graduate fully to not being an assistant, but I feel like there were still certain engineers who would request me, or like certain high profile gigs that like I was still asked to assist just because I had the most seniority and the most experience at that time.
Gotcha. Okay. And when return clients, would they ask for you specifically because they just had a good vibe?
I think so. Yeah. Sometimes some people, either you got along well or like you were the first person they met, at the studio. So then they just, they know me, so they'd rather go with someone they know rather than a new face.
Okay.
So some, especially engineers too. Like I feel like there were a few engineers that were comfortable working with me, and they just want to keep that relationship going if possible.
Cool.
Yeah.
Was it a big decision because you walked away from that gig to do freelance work, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Was that a big decision? Was that a big decision, or? I
think like, in anyone's, I feel like it was inevitable. Like, anyone who came before me or after me, like, at some point, inevitably, it's not like a position that you can hold on to forever. It's quite demanding in terms of like hours and it's like it's just like a demanding job. And also, yeah, you want to have more opportunity and freedom to like do your own thing, like work with your own clients, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's like, it was always hard to find, but it was challenging in terms of like finding the right time. Because when you're like, when I was senior assistant, like you have a lot of responsibility and it's hard to just like all of a sudden offload it all to someone else.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's like you become pretty like valuable to the whole business. So then it's like, how do you extricate yourself without causing like a huge mess?
Yeah.
So that was a process, took a few months. You know, I had to like hire and train people, you know, until they were like, had enough experience to kind of like fill in like the void that I would leave after leaving.
Yeah. So you decided to leave when you like kind of trusted that it was in good hands?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that like everything would be fine after I left. So yeah, so probably, you know, it probably took like, you know, a few months, like maybe even as long as 6 months until like from when I first like kind of decided that I would leave to like when I finally left, you know.
Okay, cool.
But no, yeah, it was obviously, and it's a bit nerve-wracking too, because you know, like you have like it's not exactly a salary, but like you have like income that's sort of guaranteed when you're working for a studio, and then when you're freelancing, all of a sudden it's like you have no more guaranteed income, so it's kind of like jumping into a void. So that was stressful for sure, but I think I just knew that it had to happen, and I just had faith that I guess things would work out.
Yeah, cool. And so did you start freelancing pretty much right away, or did you have to grind pretty hard to find clients, or how did that unfold when you decided to walk into your own thing?
Well, I was kind of lucky because through being at the studio, I had, you know, like a fair amount of clients. I had enough to like get me going, just like people that worked with me, and I had sort of like found another studio to work in that I could rent and work out of.
Okay.
So yeah, as I remember it, like when I left, like I had work for like a few months, and then I just like was hoping that it would keep going. But yeah, there was nothing guaranteed, you know. But I think I felt like I had enough contacts and enough like potential work on the horizon that I just felt like it would work out. I definitely was grinding, you know. But I feel like as a freelancer, it's like you're always grinding to some extent, you know.
Yeah, it's just the constant.
You always have to be like thinking one step ahead of like, okay, what's next? Like, what am I going to do? Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to like think of the next project, but also stay focused on the project you're working on at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. At this point, I'm pretty used to it, but yeah, it's definitely, to anyone who freelances, yeah, they're pretty familiar with that. Like, you always got to kind of keep in mind what's coming, like, you know.
Okay. Was it difficult to set a rate or like start asking people directly for money, or were you pretty good at just being like, this is what my time's worth?
Yeah, you know? That's a good question. I mean, I don't feel like it's my forte. I've always struggled with that aspect, but I don't remember how I don't remember how I set rates in the beginning. I probably asked people that I knew, you know. I probably, asked around and then just went with like what people seemed like, what their budgets were.
Yep.
I don't remember it being too hard. I feel like it's like a lot of times like I was limited by like the budgets that people had, and at that point I was a lot more ready to just like take whatever I could get.
Yeah. Okay. Work within the band's budget or the artist's budget. Yeah,
exactly. But no, it's never been like, I don't feel like I've been particularly good at that aspect of of my job. It's always been a bit of a struggle, but you know, you learn with time, and I think with time you sort of like you gain a bit of confidence too on like what you think your time is worth, and and also the artists that you work with gain experience as well, and hopefully get like bigger budgets as you grow. The artists that you're working with grow, and maybe they're better at getting like funding and stuff like that. So it's all happened like fairly organically, but yeah, it's always been a bit of a struggle to be honest. But
you find the client or the band or the musicians like expectations kind of dictate that? Like, can you tell if a band or an artist is asking you or talking to you about working on a project? Can you kind of tell by their experience level how that's going to play out?
Oh yeah, well, yeah. There's certain red flags. Like at this point, I don't want to I work for free or do something that like isn't really. So yeah, there's some people that are interested in hiring an engineer or getting a professional mix done, but they don't necessarily know what it entails. And like, yeah, often if you ask enough follow-up questions, you'll sort of like how serious the artist is will be revealed sort of in in the initial sort of process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, I feel like, yeah, you can generally tell how serious people are. And sometimes it's not even like a bad thing. It's just some people, they just don't really know. They don't really have any idea of like what the costs might be of hiring someone, you know?
Okay.
And to be fair, like it's hard nowadays in music.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for artists to make money. So unless you have like grant funding, it's hard for artists to be able to like afford to hire, you know, like a professional engineer to like, let's say, record their entire album and mix their entire album,
Mm-hmm.
and then have their album professionally mastered as well. Like that's very expensive, and like it requires like a certain amount of it just requires a lot of money. So unless you are independently wealthy or you have grant funding, it's kind of hard for people to do themselves.
Okay. Do you find a lot of artists nowadays are like doing, maybe they reach out to you for one specific thing, like, hey, can you record vocals for this? Or like, can you track the drums? Or, you know, that sort of thing?
I mean, yeah, it's like, it's rare. It's rare and rare that I'll be a part of a whole project from A to Z.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, it's like either mixing or, yeah, I'll be hired to engineer part of it, like for a specific session.
Okay.
Or I'll record just the vocals. Yeah, there's a lot of that for sure.
Do you have a preference between tracking versus mixing? Like if you were hired for just one or the other?
It's hard to say. I really like doing both.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of depends on my mood. Like if I'm doing a lot of engineering work, then I'll sort of like be more excited about mixing.
Mm-hmm.
But then if I only mix, I like variety. So then if I only mixed for like, you know, a few months, then I'll like be itching to get back into the studio.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I like doing both, and I like variety. I do a lot of different things even now. Like I do a lot of live sound as well.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah, it's just like I like having the variety. I don't like, well, maybe I would like it, but that's kind of the way it's worked out. Like I'll really touch on like a whole lot of different things, and I work on a lot of different kinds of music as well.
Okay.
So
cool.
So it feels like it always keeps me. So no, I don't have a strong preference towards one or the other. I like doing all of it.
Okay. When you are tracking, is there a different approach when you're tracking and you suspect you're going to mix it versus you're tracking it and you know that you're sending it off to another for someone else to mix?
Well, there shouldn't be, but there definitely is. Sometimes I'm a bit more aggressive if I know I'm going to be mixing it. Mm-hmm. Cause like
aggressive in terms of like coloring the sound, like aggressive. Or
yeah, exactly. Like coloring the sound or taking risks.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
But I try to record everything as if someone else was going to mix it.
Okay.
Because it's generally a good practice because you never know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think if I think I'm going to be mixing something, I'll commit more to certain sounds, or I'll, you know, take more risk. Like that might mean like, for example, like if I know someone's recording, someone's gonna be mixing something, then maybe I'll record like a safety mic that's cleaner than maybe, you know, the more processed mic that I have, or, okay. You know, I'll ensure that there's like more standard, like mic placement, just so like I don't get yelled at by someone when they get the tracks, you know, or
gotcha.
Or I'll make sure I'll really be more careful about stuff like noise floor and stuff like that.
Okay.
But I do try to be pretty diligent, like even if I'm mixing, just to make sure that the artist has everything they need.
Okay.
In terms of like, you know, yeah, because when you're recording, you know, sometimes I have a tendency to like want to commit to certain things, which I think is cool, but I want to make sure that the artist has everything they need to work with in case they change their mind, or, you know, in case they want to like, I don't know, in case they want to, you know, because when you're recording, let's say a live band, there might be a lot of bleeds. So just like try to make the bleed as little as possible so that if they want to like edit the arrangement later, stuff like that, you know, I try to make sure that like everything is is good, so that even if I hand the session over to someone else, like they're going to be able to do what they need to do.
Gotcha. Yeah. Do you find there's that kind of pull, like you as an engineer, you kind of want to exercise some creativity, but like what we were talking about earlier, it's a kind of a service industry, so you want to serve the client, so you got to kind of have to like be careful it doesn't warp into like your creative session versus the artist's creative session.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be careful, or have to be careful to not put too much of your own stamp on something, you know, that's not yours really. It's like, it's really the artist's music. It's going to be their name on it. So yeah, it's like, I think like, you know, people hire engineers for their taste, you know? So it's like, I feel like people encourage me usually to do what I think sounds best. But also, yeah, I'm not interested in like necessarily like imparting my own sound on everything I do. I try to like serve whatever the music is trying to achieve.
Okay.
So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Oh yeah, no, that's cool. Maybe thinking a little bit more techie related. When you're like, do you do mic shootouts for vocals? Like, do you find? I'm always curious about the mic choice versus just throwing up what's known to be the best mic in the room, you know?
I will when possible. So it depends like on the situation. So like I do a lot of vocals in my studio, which is this room right here. So it's a pretty small room, and I know my mics really well. So I almost always use the same mic now.
Okay.
No matter because I just don't have that much. I don't have that many great sounding mics. Like I have one really great sounding mic. So most of the time I'll just use that. But if I'm recording in a recording studio, like a pro studio, and there's a lot of mics available and I don't know them all, then I will do a shootout for vocals, because I find it's helpful just to hear what they all sound like and to hear what works best with a particular singer. So like if I have a variety of mics, then I'll do a shootout. If I'm only working with a few mics, then I'll and I kind of know them well, then I'll just use that. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
But I definitely believe in shootouts. It's just sometimes it doesn't really call for it in terms, like if you don't have that many mics to shoot out, or if you're pretty confident on the direction.
Yeah.
But no,
I mean, that comes with experience too, right?
Yeah. Well, and if I'm not sure actually about the direction, then I will do a shootout. Like it's like, do you go for a more hi-fi vocal sound or more lo-fi vocal sound? You know, sometimes it's not really clear. So yeah, it's a good idea too. And actually, now that we're talking about this, I'm like, maybe I should do more shootouts in my studio. Yeah.
That makes me think too about, like, I've been thinking a lot about the difference between trusting your feeling and trusting the fidelity of like what you hear. Like I'm kind of curious, like where, you know, it's kind of the thing, like you capture, like maybe there's a mistake in the performance, but it feels so good that you just like want to leave the mistake there, or, you know, something like that. Does that ever come about? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I feel like to me they're sort of like intertwined. Like if like I feel like I do try to listen to the feeling. I definitely do try to, you know, listen to how something feels. But to me, sometimes the fidelity it'll be like linked. So like if something sounds great and it feels great, you know, then that's the one, you know. But sometimes, yeah, like fidelity, like there is such a thing as something sounding too good for the arrangement, you know, potentially. So yeah, but yeah, I definitely do try to, and that's something that as engineers you can get lost in a little bit, like fidelity versus like the feel of something or what's right for the song. So I'm always trying to pay attention to that, because I feel like as engineers, yeah, you get caught up sometimes in like you know, like the engineering tropes of like having like punchy drums and like having like a mix that's really loud, or like, I don't know, like some of these things that like as engineers we obsess over, but like don't ultimately necessarily always contribute to how a song will resonate with like regular listeners.
Yep.
So yeah, as engineers, I feel like we need to toe that line of like, yeah, our job is to create the best sounding, like mix or recording or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But we also don't want to do damage to the to the song,
Mm-hmm.
by over engineering something.
Yeah. Just because it sounds as high fidelity as possible doesn't mean it's the right. It doesn't mean it fits the project or the song necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you can definitely make the wrong choices, along that road, like by trying to make. And in fact, like, though that was always the biggest mistake I made, like early on in my career, was like over mixing something, or being fixated on a specific idea that had nothing to do with the overall picture, Like, so if I were to listen to some of my earlier recordings, like that would always be the case. I feel like I would listen to something, I'd be like, oh, this is when I was like getting obsessed with drum sounds, or like this is when I was getting obsessed with like vocal delay, and it's just like, it's like completely out of place, but it's just because I was like learning about this particular thing and I wanted to exercise. I wanted to like try out that idea, but it's out of place,
Yeah, it's like you put it into the mix already before even listening to it. It's like it's already there and you're going to do it no matter what. And it's like you don't even listen to think if it's appropriate or not.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's like a big danger in engineering, is like, being like taken away from the overall picture by like specific ideas, or specific technical ideas, which can just distract from like what like 99% of people are going to hear, which is just like the song.
Do you think have you had the experience? Okay. Do you think it's worse? Is there a thought on like if the band is also hip to engineering? Like, is it helpful when the artist or the client understands the process, or is that kind of like, does that sometimes cause a bit of friction, or any thoughts on that?
Well, it depends, because like they can fall into the same traps as engineers can, you know? Like, so for example, maybe you have a member of the band who's like just learned about like vintage gear. Like they might be obsessed with like using as many vintage mics as possible.
Okay.
But like maybe it doesn't matter. Like maybe that's really besides the point, Maybe you should be focusing on like what the arrangement of your song is.
Yeah.
Oh,
so, yeah, okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Like they can fall into the same traps as engineers can. So sometimes, but not to say that they're wrong. Like I've found that many times working with bands who are hip to engineering they've taught me a lot, actually. And sometimes they'll be the ones to point out when you're off the mark. So I think it's important to listen to whoever it is you're working with. Definitely listen for their feedback. But yeah, they're as likely to fall into those issues as you are. So yeah, I guess, take what people say with a grain of salt, but always consider if you're getting feedback from an artist about engineering or the mix or anything like that, you should always consider what they have to say, because like they might be right, So I try to always be as open as possible to any kind of critique I'm getting from. Sometimes it's hard because we're so fixated sometimes on like our particular version that it's hard to sometimes like open your mind up to another possibility. But I think it's super important. And yeah, sometimes it does feel like there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen when like every member of the band is an engineer, but ultimately we're all trying to like get the best result. So
yeah,
I feel like it, like, hopefully over time I've been humbled enough times that now I'm like, if someone tells me like, hey, are you sure about this thing you did? I'll be like, I'll either, maybe I will be sure about it, or maybe I'll be like, you know what, you're right. Like maybe we should try something else. Or,
I guess it goes both ways. You also have to be able to you have to be able to say, okay, I'm wrong here, but you also have to be like, no, trust me. This is going to work in the end.
Yeah. Well, I think like a good rule of thumb is like try everything, like try it, try it and try to be open to it. But yeah, if you try it and it doesn't feel right, then all you can say is like, listen, I don't think I agree. And then you might be voted out. You might ultimately be outvoted on that point, which is okay. But as long as you can honestly give your feedback, then you've done all you can do.
You've done the best. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
How important would you say like reference albums or reference mixes are when you're starting a project or mixing a project?
Yeah, that's a complicated question. I've covered a lot of ground with that in my own journey. I think references can be important, but they can also hinder depending on like how you use them. Like I would say, like I'm at a point now, and I'll preface this by saying that I've kind of been on both extremes. Like I used to very obsessively reference music when I was mixing, and I kind of in the end came out of it feeling like it hindered a little bit my work. Like because I would get so obsessed with like matching a particular mix. That again I would like ignore, or like I would like ignore certain problems like that I was creating while trying to match it. So now I try to see references more of as like an overall inspiration, as opposed to something to match like more exactly. If that makes any sense. So like now the way I'll use references is like if an artist sends me a reference or if I have my own reference, what I'll do is I'll just listen to it before starting to work on the song and just kind of let it like, I'll listen to it, I'll listen to what it's doing, I'll listen to the choices that the artist made on the song, and then I'll just kind of let it inform my decisions moving forward. But I won't like obsessively compare or try to like match it, if that makes any sense. So
that's cool. Have you ever run into an issue where a client presents like a reference, like we're going for this, and then it's like really not appropriate for what they're actually putting out there? Have you ever come across that?
Well, kind of, but sometimes it was my own doing, because I'd be like, hey, I'd like you to send me references so I know where we're going. And then they try to find references and this is what they come up with. But like sometimes they had no references to begin with. So then they just pick a reference, but maybe it's arbitrary because like maybe there was no reference, Maybe they just created this song and they like it. And then but then they're like reverse engineering, going back and trying to see what songs fit. So I feel like in some of those occasions it was my own doing, because I was like, hey, I need a reference. And then they found a reference, but it wasn't like, it's not like the song was created with this song in mind. It was just like chosen after the fact. It's like, oh, both these songs have piano, like both these songs have like soulful vocals, but it's not like that song inspired the writing of, the song. It was so, but I always try to be like, okay, maybe there's a lot of differences here, but it's like, maybe there's something in the reference that I can take away,
Yeah, gotcha.
Like maybe it's a feeling, maybe it's, I don't know, some sort of particular aesthetic I can like apply, even if I'm not like copying exactly. So, but I think it's very personal too. Like certain artists rely on references a lot, others don't, and it's like there's like a million and one ways to work. So I'm not saying that like any one way is better. I've just found that for myself, I feel like I can get thrown off track if I use references too much while mixing. So that's me. At least that's me right now. I don't know. I might change my workflow like in a few months. I don't know.
It's always evolving. I'm sure that's kind of it's part of the game too. You don't want to just be stale and stick to one direction or one idea.
I think it's like, it's always naturally. I feel like for everyone, it's just naturally always just like changing slowly over time. So.
Do you have any projects you're working on right now that you're excited about that you want to plug or anything like that? Or?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of music coming out this fall. That's all already done. But let's see. Well, like this band I worked with a lot, Pony Girl, they're releasing a new album in October.
Cool.
So we actually recorded 2 albums in the same time span. The last one came out last October, and the second one is coming out. The first one came out last October. The second one is coming out this October. It's called Laugh It Off. So I only recorded that. I didn't mix it, but the recording process was really fun and very like involved. A lot of days in the studio, a lot of experimentation. So that was really fun.
Cool.
Fun album to work on.
The album before that, what's it called again? Anything Will Do?
Will Love You.
Anyone Will Love You. Yeah. It's funny because when I started working at the radio station where I'm working now here in St. John, that was that might have been the first album I opened in the mail from like a submission. Yeah.
Nice.
Pony Girl.
Yeah.
First thing I entered into the database. I didn't know you were involved, obviously. It's just pure cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Cool. So I want to be respectful of your time here. It's been an hour, believe it or not.
Yeah, it goes fast.
If someone wants to reach out to you and get in touch or, follow up on your releases or your work, what's the best way for someone to do that?
Probably my website, sebastianperry.com. I try to update the releases as they happen. I haven't posted like the new singles on there yet, but when an album comes out, I'll usually throw it up there.
Okay.
There's like a contact page as well.
Okay.
If not, I'm trying to be better about posting on Instagram in terms of like new releases and stuff. So
yeah,
also on Instagram.
Okay. What's your handle on Instagram?
Oh, at Seb Perry.
Seb Perry, SEB. Seb Perry.
SEBPERRY. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Sweet, man. Thanks a lot for doing this. This is fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it. This is my first ever interview. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it was good.
No problem.
I feel like it was. I listened to so many of these kinds of interviews. Like it was very funny to like do it myself.
Yeah. It's kind of fun. I mean, it's all for fun anyway. So whatever. It's been great. So maybe next.
For having me.
Oh yeah, no problem. And maybe next. I come to Montreal still every once in a while. So maybe next time I'll drop you a line.
Oh really? Yeah, dude. Definitely hit me up. Yeah, we should grab a coffee or something.
Yeah. Very cool. I'll do that.
Nice, man.
Cool.
Well, thanks a lot. And
no problem.
When you'll let me know when this comes out.
Yeah, so it'll probably be a few weeks. I'll air it on my show here in St. John.
Okay.
That we stream it online, but then I'll throw it up on YouTube and Spotify and all that as the podcast version. So
nice, cool.
Yeah, cool.
Well, I appreciate you reaching out, and all the best. And let me know when you're in St. John, when you're in Montreal.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I'm sure like a year's time from now, maybe we can do another one or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Yeah. If you keep it up, I'll check out the show too. You should. When send me all the info and.
I'll do that.
I'll check it out.
Cool. Awesome.
Oh man. Well, I'll get to it. I got a couple things to finish up here before the weekends.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I got to get ready to head out the door too. So I'm off to job number 2.
Job number 2. All right.
Job number 2. All right, cool. All right, thanks dude.
Man.
Bye.
Easy. Bye.